Good morning. Welcome to the Maristem Minute. This morning, we have Peter Rousonelos joining us, and he's going to talk to us about the current market trends and how we can take cost out. We're at a market where fertility prices are extremely high, and he's going to help us understand those markets, but also see some other options. So, with that, Peter, take it away.
Yeah, good morning, Melanie. Thanks for having me on here. And I think this is this is a topic in the countryside we're talking about a lot right now. Every conversation the last few weeks has been around how do I get my economics right, and maintain good agronomy, right? So as I think about the farmers out there, they're out harvesting crop right now. In a lot of areas, we're seeing some good yields. In some areas, we're struggling. We've had a year where prices are lower. We've had high disease pressure. We've had to manage this crop, spend some money on this crop, and now we're thinking about going into next year, and we have to think about fertilizer. And so as I think about fertilizer, I think about the fact that the prices are really high on fertilizer. So we call this taking cost out and combating, these prices and trying to keep it economic, right? So the problem is fertilizer prices at historical highs versus crop prices. So let's just take the agronomy out of the equation for right now and just talk about economics. I look at it as farmers need to really focus on efficiency, and a lot of that's because of this slide you're showing here, where we're at all-time highs for phosphorus cost compared to the cost of the bushel of corn or soybeans. UAN is the second worst, urea is the third worst. So there's a lot of price pressure on fertilizer, which is a commodity, against the price of grain, which is also a commodity. So I look at it just economically. If you're in the commodity business selling a commodity grain, why would we pay a fortune for a commodity fertilizer? And so as you move to that next slide, you'll see that we have a lot of nutrients in our soil profile. Now, this doesn't mean don't buy fertilizer this year. That's not what we're saying. I'm saying let's evaluate and think about some of the tools we have available to us. What's out there? What can we do to combat this high price fertilizer? Because in the end, if we put out 100, $150 worth of fertilizer, we only going to get a certain percentage, maybe 10%, 15 at the most. And so that's a tough spend this year as we try to get the economics right. So here it shows we have 1,200 pounds of phosphorus in the upper inches of our soil profile. Most of that unavailable. I'm going to focus a lot on phosphorus in this conversation, but even potassium, we have 50,000 pounds of potassium in that upper inches of the soil profile. And so how do we access that? How do we think about that differently? And when you look at phosphorus, it is not mobile in most soils because it quickly becomes tied up in unavailable forms through chemical reactions with soil particles. Primarily, it ties up that soluble phosphorus ties up with iron, aluminum, and calcium in the soil, which forms insoluble compounds that bind to soil particles. And that's kind of shown here in this slide where we've got a lot of phosphorus that ties up. The only phosphorus that's available is what's in that yellow box that we call soil solution, right? So we call that soluble phosphorus, plant available phosphorus. And there's only so much of that, very, very little. Most is insoluble, or in the form of organic P. But with organic P, we can actually decompose some of that. We can release and dissolve some of that phosphorus that is stored in organic forms. And there are ways to do that and focus on increasing that soluble phosphorus.
So, Peter, when people look at a soil test, what form or what are they seeing in their soil test versus what you're showing here?
Most of the time, we're just showing, available, I'll call it available phosphorus, but really it's just the amount of pounds of P in the soil profile. It doesn't mean it's available to the crop. So we're just looking at pounds of P available, or pounds of P, I'm sorry, that are in that soil profile. And so when I do a soil test, it'll show that I've got 21 or 30 parts per million of phosphorus, but that doesn't mean I can actually access all that phosphorus. And so that's when I see that, that means I've got that stored up in there, but that's like a bank of phosphorus. So how do I access more of it? That's really the key here. So when we look at that, how do we capture the value of fertilizer previously purchased? A lot of this is because we do have residue out there in the field. We do have all that phosphorus in our soil profile that is tied up and unavailable. The good thing here, phosphorus, unlike a lot of our other nutrients, it's immobile so that we don't lose it, right? So we lose nitrogen, we lose sulfur, we lose a lot of these nutrients, and we have to replace them every year. With phosphorus, we don't necessarily have to do that. We want to maintain good agronomy and be applying fertilizer out there on an annual basis. But when it comes to this phosphorus nutrient, it's really more about releasing what's there. And so this is something from the University of Illinois that I thought was kind of cool. We were always told as kids to reduce, reuse, recycle. And why do we do that? We do that to minimize waste, use more of it, and find a new use. And so with fertilizer, we're doing the same thing. Reduce, we do have a lot of fertilizer in residue. Reuse, there's a lot of nutrient value tied up in residue and in our upper inch of the soil profile. And recycle by turning that into plant available nutrients that provide us yield in our future crops. So a lot of that, when we look at stover, I kind of put some terms out here that we call stover: trash, residue, stover. I also call it a host for disease, and it's also a good fertilizer source. Big takeaways here. Nutrients derived from crop residue are in plant available form and more efficiently used by the plant. That means anything that's released out of that crop residue, whether it be you're looking at that residue on top of the soil surface like we are in this picture, or whether that's residue that's in that upper, 6 inches of soil profile that hasn't broke down yet, right? It's still organic material. It's still breaking down over time. You don't have to necessarily be able to see it like in this picture to have that residue available or that organic material in that upper inch of the soil profile that we can still degrade and turn into plant available nutrients. But when it comes out of that, it is in plant available form, it's more efficient, and the plant can use it more efficiently. The big thing too is timing of availability. We see this crop, this stover out here, this residue, and we think, I'm going to get that nutrient sooner or later. And that's not always the case. That mineralization process is going to happen differently every single year. We're going to get some available throughout the season, sure, but we don't know what Mother Nature is going to do with heat and water, and how quick that nutrient is going to come available. So, what can we do to degrade this residue, manage it as best as possible to influence nutrient availability at a time where the plant actually needs it during the season? And then, final thing is, I look at all this out here, and I mentioned disease earlier in the recording, Melanie. There's a lot of disease out here, and we're seeing everything from gray leaf spot to northern corn leaf blight to tar spot, you name it in corn. Southern rust, all the way clear up into northern Illinois where I'm at. That's not normal. We've got a lot of disease pressure out here in this stover. So if we do manage it, we'll also reduce our pathogens and disease pressure by reducing that residue. So we look at the nutritional value of corn stalks and what's out there. And we talked about that. 200 bushel corn, 250 bushel corn, 300 bushel corn. We've got a lot of nutrients out there. Let's look primarily at this P205 where we've got plant available phosphorus. We got 23 pounds in 250 bushel corn. We've got 131 pounds of potassium. There's a lot of nutrients out here available to this crop that we can access.
Gosh, Peter, that was a
So when we
lot of
look at,
information. The market is really tough. It's a hard environment for farmers, I think more so than we've ever seen in the past. You talk about residue management. Meristem has some great tools to be able to help with this fertility value. So excavator AMS. You talked a lot about phosphorus and how much phosphorus there's in the soil. So the ability to use Upshift C plus to help drive that phosphorus, the hopper throttles, being able to drive fertility and fertility really right at that seed bank. And so better utilizing dollars in that respect, and then maintaining your nitrogen. So keeping your nitrogen in the right zone. So great information, great market analysis, and in some ways that we need to think differently in this space. So as people are spending
yeah, that's
dollars on fertility, what's your couple quick hit takeaways, Peter?
Yeah, no, I think this slide shows a lot of tools out here available to growers to combat these prices. So my quick takeaways is, fertilizer prices are high. Grain prices are lower right now. These are challenges. They're hopefully short-term challenges. And so Meristem, we can provide tools to manage through those challenges. The big thing is I don't want guys to take money away from managing their crop in season. We've seen the value of fungicide. We've seen the value of plant health this year in a big way. Um, and so what we don't want to do is go put out a bunch of fertilizer this fall and then not have the money to manage that crop in season. Let's take and leverage soil biology. Let's take and leverage the nutrients we have because if you've been good stewards, which a lot of farmers have been the last few years, you've been good stewards, you've been putting out the fertility that is necessary, you've got a lot of crop residue out there. Let's utilize the tools to reduce our costs this year. Let's influence the availability of phosphorus and potassium and utilize these tools you got here on the screen and make sure that we control our bottom line and are profitable into next season.
With that, that is your Maristem Minute.